I've experienced that too as a nonprofit entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you apply to so many grants, you compete in so many different pitch competitions and things like that, and you put so much into it, and then it doesn't always work out, and sometimes it's very disappointing, especially when it's, you know, these processes are so long and so in some ways a little daunting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out, okay, I didn't get it, and it can be disheartening, but you cannot allow yourself to sulk, and that's one of the things that you learn. I played basketball, so that's one of the things that I learned. Like, you can't, you're going to miss shots.
Right.
You're going to turn the ball over.
You're going to airball a few times.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it can be, and what's similar is that, you know, you can prepare for a game, you can train, you can work out, and then you can still just have an off night. Right. You know what I mean? But you still have to find a way to deliver in some way, not let yourself down, not let the people that are counting on you down. So.
Welcome to the Sheltuh Podcast, where it stands for Sharing Health Equity and Leverage to Urban Households. Here we have a special guest by the name of Kelly Haywood. And so, round of applause. I appreciate it. A little silent round of applause myself. But please, before we get started, who are you? What are you about?
Yeah.
And what brought you here?
Yeah, so I'm Kelly Haywood, founder and executive director of Dream On Education. I am a community leader, originally from Kansas City, Missouri, graduated from Spelman College in Atlanta, and then moved to Chicago in 2009 for graduate school at Northwestern. Okay. My passion really is providing opportunities and resources and access to people that may not normally have access to them. I had both my parents are first generation college graduates, so I have family members and friends that are bright, talented people that simply needed access to resources and opportunities. And in 2012, I decided to go ahead and do that by starting my organization, Dream On Education. So that's a little bit about me.
Got you. And so as far as your organization, what is your organization about?
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit for high-achieving, low-income middle school students. We partner with different schools throughout Chicago and provide them with enrichment services, scholastic development, mentoring, career exposure, and cultural exposure. A huge part of our programming really is, as I said before, to provide that access and opportunities to kids that may not normally have access to it, but also to kids that want to do well, who have the capacity to do well. They simply need the opportunity, like we all do, right? Everybody needs someone to give them a shot. Everybody needs someone to kind of show them the way, and that's really what Dream On is about. So we meet with the students weekly, provide them with a very detailed curriculum that really challenges them academically, but it also prepares them socially and emotionally for high school, college, and beyond. And the other piece is that we go on different trips throughout the city to expose the students to different professions, different forms of art, cultures, and things of that nature.
That's what's up. So with regards to Dream On Education, I definitely understand that, like, if you start a nonprofit at such a young age, there were things that you experienced at a young age that sort of lit that spark to say you to create this need. Can you please talk about those things that you experienced as a young kid growing up, and as you were developing into your young adult years, as to what led you to bring up this Dream On Education organization?
Yeah, so I was a very kind of like hyperactive, like I wasn't a bad kid, but I always loved to be busy, and I'm still that way. Like I have to be doing something. And my parents really nurtured that. They really made sure that I was involved in everything from, summer camps to I played basketball from age 8 throughout college. I was a student. The term gifted and talented is not something that I really subscribe to, but I was in like the high achieving programs as a kid.
Why is it?
Just because I think that we're all gifted and talented. You know what I mean? And it sounds a little corny and cliche, but we are. It's just a matter of, not everyone is going to be a straight A student, but there are people that can do things exceptionally well, things that, that things that aren't my talents, or, we are all gifted in different ways. We're all blessed with different strengths and skill sets. So I just don't think that, and we're all talented. It's just a matter of finding it.
Finding talent.
Like I said, I played sports was a huge part of, my life. And again, I had people around me that really nurtured that. I was also in a business program when I was 16 years old. Coincidentally, it was actually at Northwestern, but it was,
Came full circle.
Yeah, very much so. And so I learned pretty early on that I enjoy learning by doing, which is, I think now it's almost on steroids with kids, you know what I mean? Because they have access to so much from, social media to just technology in general. I see that we instill a lot of those same, not necessarily values, but those same qualities within the work that we do by teaching the students by learning by doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think also too, with regards to, I'd love for you to speak on specifically that population that you are serving, right? Because speak on that, because I want to say about it.
No.
Let the people know, like, far as you are, Kelly is serving or administering services for a particular group of audience that sometimes, most of the time, gets overlooked, especially within the inner city. So please talk about that.
Yeah. So, like I said, they're high achieving, low income 6th to 8th graders. A lot of times the students that we serve are, like you said, the forgotten group or the overlooked demographic, because they are the students that, typically do well academically, or when they go to school, they're quiet or a little reserved. They might be interested in things that the other kids may not be interested in. And so there's this assumption that because they're high achievers that they don't need, additional resources and opportunities, but statistically, it couldn't be further from the truth. By the time high-achieving, low-income students reach the 9th grade, they either plateau or decline because they aren't challenged, acknowledged, or rewarded in grades 6 through 8. And so there becomes almost this aversion to learning or just school, sometimes in general. And then the other piece of that is that, we hear about young people in low-income communities that are either in gangs or dropping out or things of that nature. But that's only part of the narrative. There are a ton of kids that are bright, talented, that want to do well, that are great kids. They just really need a chance and need some people to guide them. And so that's the group that we serve.
Okay, I think that's really nice, because the thing is too, what you highlighted was, between that 6th grade and 8th grade years, you may be high achieving. So my thing is this, how have your organization sort of been talk about how your organization has been that backbone to keep your students to say, keep being encouraged, keep being influenced. You feel what I'm saying? Because, if you're doing well, if you're getting all A's in your classes and doing your thing, between 6th and 8th grade, and there's no acknowledgement or encouragement, you're gonna fall off, right? And so, my thing is this, and if you are not being encouraged in a constructive manner, those other forces within the environment will definitely influence you.
Exactly.
So can you talk about how, like, the whole idea of, like, being a product in your environment, and how that could sort of be a huge factor when going in the city? Please talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, as you said, I think it's even as adults, if we aren't encouraged, rewarded, or just acknowledged, sometimes we will eventually just be like, you know what? I don't know if this is worth it. Like I keep doing X, Y, and Z, but nobody's even acknowledging it. So imagine that as an 11-year-old. Like I'm not cutting up. I'm coming to school. I'm, actually overachieving, but nobody's acknowledging it. So we make sure to really celebrate the students a lot, because we're doing it in a group setting. When we go on our different trips, of course we want them to learn. So when we go to like different company visits, or if we go to dinner at a sit-down restaurant, we've had a sketch class. We talked about this before with Hebrew Brantley. We make sure that those experiences are robust and like almost celebratory. So it's not like a party, a free-for-all, but it is, in addition to you learning how to do this skill set, you're also being celebrated. So that's a piece of it. And then as far as just being a product of, your environment, again, I think it's something that we see throughout our entire lives. If you are not surrounded by other people who also want to do well, who also are saying, you're interested. So we have an example. So at one of our schools, we have in Dream On, we have a lot of kids that are interested in anime. Whereas outside of the program, there may not be a lot of kids that are interested in that. So imagine going to school all year, like I'm interested in, it's this thing that I'm crazy about. Right. And I don't have anybody to even talk to.
Or being labeled as weird.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a huge part of it. So it's really just like helping them to find their tribe, you know what I mean? And not only finding their tribe amongst themselves, but also knowing that we're here to help and to support that and to encourage that. So
that's dope, because the thing is, what I just picked up from what you're saying was this whole idea about exposure and the kids that you face on a daily basis.
Right.
And I was a mentor. Shout out to Gary Comer College Prep. I was a mentor for Gary Comer, and a lot of the students that I mentored there, they never been north than the South Loop, right? So my thing is this: you 14, 15 years old, you've been in Chicago your whole life, and you have never been downtown, never been to the West Loop, never been to the North Suburbs. So the idea of, constantly challenging what the environment is that you're a product of, right? And so I was talking to one of the students, and I was talking about how your environment is external, but there's also an aspect of internal environment that you're a product of as well. So if you go outside, you're walking outside, you see trash on the ground, you see nothing but disenfranchisement through your eyes, you can unfortunately internalize that, right? But if you have this internal background, this internal environment, so regardless of what I see in my external, I can definitely use the courage, be courageous in my convictions to change my internal environment to exchange what I see externally.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that, the exposure that you are providing to your skill set and to your people, to your population is commendable.
Thank you.
Can you talk about, as far as the progression of your students, like are there anything specifically, or also too, what can you get we have a lot of parents too who are also part of listening to the Sheltuh Podcast and watching being online. Can you talk to what can parents do to fill that void, or if they have a child who's high achieving, but they are definitely withdrawn and they may be isolated from the schools that they attend? What can they do? What can parents do, or leaders of households do to prevent their child from plateauing or declining once they get to high school?
Yeah, I would say, and I will say that I'm by no means like an expert, but just from the experience, with Dream On and just my personal experiences, I think a huge part of it is really paying attention to what the kid is interested in. You know what I mean? Like, pay attention to the fact that, when he talks about this, he lights up. Maybe find a program, even if and I know sometimes it's a matter of, transportation or finances that can limit it. But I would say exhausting as many resources as possible to see if there, is financial aid that's available for, extracurricular activities that are outside of the school. Also having those conversations. I think, a lot of times it's easy to just kind of be like, with kids that do well already, they go to school, they come home, they're not causing problems. But having that conversation, like, how was your day? What went on today? Because I think a lot of times now, I think we're all guilty of it, even as adults. Like, we get home from work or whatever it is that, wherever we're coming from, we could just kind of lock in on our cell phones or Netflix or something, and we're not really interacting. So I think that's a huge part of it, is having those conversations as well.
Wow, you know, that's a good
Excuse
point
me.
because, you know, unfortunately, especially specifically within the inner city, parents, they have so many other things on their plate,
Yeah.
right? They gotta, you know, make sure there's food on the table, you know, make sure their kids get to school. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, you know, you have a lot of grandparents raising children, you know, have a lot of aunties raising children, everybody else other than the actual parents. And so I'm sure you have dealt with that on a daily basis with regards to your students.
Absolutely.
And can you talk about how students who come from that sort of background, how have they been impacted? You know, have you seen their progression? Who have you seen specifically with regards to that population or that specific demographic?
Yeah, so I think a huge part of where we see growth is in confidence and presentation skills and just the ability to self-advocate and the sense of self-awareness. You know, we talk, you know, a part of our curriculum, of course, integrates like math and science and like the traditional education, but a huge part of it is that self-development, which as we progress as adults, we know how important that is, right? Like you have to be able to have a conversation with somebody. You have to be able to kind of, like you said, or like I said, advocate for yourself. And so seeing that, in I would say in at least 89%, this is by, you know, we have different pre and post surveys that kind of help us to see where our students have grown. So that's in one area. Also the retention rate that we have as an organization, something that I'm very proud of. We have one school, we've been there for 6 years. Not one student has dropped out over the 6 years. It's Tanner Elementary in Grand Crossings. And just our retention rate across the board is at 92%. And I think a lot of that is really because the students stay engaged because we make sure to really diversify the experiences. So not only are you coming to do traditional work, but you're also afforded the opportunity to kind of see the entire city and meet different people and things like that.
That's what's up. You know what, so this brings things closer to home because when you talk about that exposure and that self-development and that confidence, on a personal note, I went to Brother Rice High School, played sports, you know.
You said Brother Rice?
Brother Rice,
oh, okay, cool.
all boys school in Southside Chicago. And so, you know, being from Roseland and then going to Brother Rice, that was definitely a transition culturally for me. But then transitioning the lessons that I learned from the South Side, being at the all-boys school at Brother Rice, and also being from Roseland, and then going to Georgetown in D.C., it was eye-opening, right? Because honest with you, I was all out, you know, I'm gonna play football, I'm gonna go pro, I'm gonna do this, that, and third, right?
Yeah.
When I got to Georgetown, everything shattered, right? Because I realized that life was so much more than that. You know what I'm saying? You know, because the expectation that I set for myself was, you know, I see people who look like me succeeding, if it's through television, through sports entertainment. Yeah. Right? And that can be a very dangerous self-fulfilling prophecy. And it can lead to this big bottleneck effect where the people who don't get through the bottle, they just fall off. Right. Right? And so with creating that exposure, I realized that there's a lot more to it than just this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so my whole idea is, you know, what you talk about as far as that self-development and that sort of confidence that was developed, I didn't get that until college. So due to the fact that, you know, you are incorporating and you are, you know, providing the sense of healing 6th to 8th grade, and they haven't hit college yet, not even high school yet, it's definitely commendable. Because granted, you know what, I don't change anything, but one thing that I definitely learned from Georgetown was, you know what, sometimes you got to sink or sometimes you got to jump in the water and just say, you know, and learn how to swim as you trying to get through it, right? And so, absolutely. But unfortunately, though, gratefully, I had a mom, I had a father who was in my life, who sort of allowed me or developed me with the skill set to sort of find that way, right? But if you don't come from that, like it's like a double negative. If you don't have those parents and you still come from a disenfranchised community, that skill set or that sort of that allows you to adjust to your environment, you can't really do it. So I commend you on that because that needs to happen at a very early age. And a lot of times that sort of confidence or kind of misled confidence is being developed through media interaction. For sure. You know? So talk about how that one-on-one interaction is kind of separates, makes a development impact with regards to the kids that you serve?
You mean with the one-on-one interaction between the students and like mentors?
Yes.
Or definitely, I think that a large part of it is one, knowing somebody cares. Like you said, you had your parents that were there to help guide you, but it's also just like knowing, you know what, somebody is paying attention, somebody cares if I do well, if they. Something that I've learned is that kids actually like. Some kids will kind of act up just to see what you're gonna do, like to see if you like. Is she paying attention to me? I'm like, okay, cool. Now I'm gonna, I'm gonna do the right thing. So I think that's a huge part of it for mentorship, and then also just having that conversation with someone that is exposing you to something different. There's someone that's telling you, one of the things that we do is we bring in mentors that are from various walks of life, ethnically, professionally, academically, and so on. And I think just saying, you know what, like, for instance, if you guys, were to come to talk to the students, you know what, like, I don't know anybody I don't know anyone that looks like me in med school, or just anyone in general. Like you said, a lot of it is just, but I've seen people, I've seen Grey's Anatomy, like, you know what I mean? They probably haven't seen Grey's Anatomy, but you know what I mean? Like we see it on TV or in shows and things like that. And so I think that a lot of times it is just, exposure is everything. Because now, like, so you and I talked before about like the sports industry, right? And that desire to play professionally. And we talk about that a lot as an organization in Dream On. And we don't discourage our students from pursuing a professional athletic career at all. But as you and I know, the percentage of success is so small. So we want to expose them to the different careers, different paths that you can take within the sports industry. You can, design your own sneaker. You don't have to just be LeBron. You can be the person that manages his money, his contracts. You can be the person that manages an entire, athletic arena and so on. And so we have those conversations with the students a lot. Really just like I was saying before, just to provide that level of exposure.
Right, and you can be the person that signs his check.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly, and it's all based on exposure. And so, the title of this is all Rap Hustle Go to the League, and I think that's very apropos to the community that we come from, right? And so a lot of times, due to the fact that a certain career field may not be seen through young kids' eyes, they deem it as not being successful, right? So due to the fact that they don't see doctors on television, or they don't see doctors in their community that look like them, due to the fact that they don't see attorneys out here doing big things, or see artists like Hebrew Brantley out here doing big things, they sort of close themselves to things that they can only physically see, right? So then that reaffirms the belief that if you are limited by what you see, what can be done internally to sort of change that outside dynamic or that external reality?
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? And the whole idea is, that's all about imagination.
For sure.
Right? Because if you grow up believing that the only way to make it out the neighborhood is bouncing the ball, catching a touchdown pass, or doing something physically, then your imagination is kind of limited.
Yeah.
It's shackled.
For sure.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do you have any personal stories where the students that you've seen when they first started was this way? And how has their imagination matured to a degree where you've seen the progression? Like, can you talk about those specific things that you've seen specifically?
Yeah, so I've seen a few. I won't say their names, because if they ever see, they're gonna be mad at me that I say their name. Why you say that?
You know who you are, though.
Right? You know who
you
are. Yeah. So we have one student who's actually in the 8th grade. He's always been a great kid, just like behaviorally, but he's just kind of shy. Very artistic, kind of has his own little swag in terms of his clothes and things like that. And the reason why I brought that up is that we had a situation where there was a day where he just dressed a little differently than the other kids. So his style is kind of think like Pharrell, right? Like he's just kind of a little eclectic. He's not as eclectic as Pharrell, but kind of that style. Well, the other kids in the school aren't really dressing like that, and so they were just giving him a really, really hard time. He's a tough kid, So if you see this, you know you're tough. But he broke down, like cried. He was just torn up about it, right? And so one of the conversations that I had with him is like own that, like own the. This is not about clothes or your outward appearance, but own the fact that you like something different. You know what I mean? The fact that you don't shy away from that. If you want to wear this, if you want to, whatever it is, own that. And so now he's very much like a leader amongst his peers, and what do they call them? Ambassador for the school. So when people come to the school, they're the one. He's like the first kid that they see, showing them around the school. Just very much just like he's gotten accepted to a number of selective enrollment schools. So it just really has blossomed into a very confident young man, and I'm excited to see what's next for him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This whole idea of ownership is very important because we all see LeBron James, Samuel L. Jacksons, the Oprah Winfreys, but no disrespect to them, right? But this whole idea of, if you constantly are reaffirmed or conditioned to see success through those specific perspectives, you sort of create ownership of your destiny, of your brand through what you see, right? And unfortunately, you think that the only way for me to make it out is by claiming ownership of their dreams.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying?
For sure, yeah.
And you're subconsciously ignoring the passion, your imagination for what you may create for your own self. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I think the root of that is exposure. Because if you don't know what you're interested in, if you're not exposed to it,
right,
you're going to do whatever.
Right.
You're going to follow the trail.
Whatever you see, yeah,
you know
for sure.
And so I think that whole idea of ownership is very important, because just because there's big dreams out there doesn't mean that the big dream that you see are yours.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it challenges the whole idea of ownership.
Absolutely.
I don't have the answer to that, but Dream On Education is the start. It can't be an answer to that. You know what I'm saying? When did you start Dream On Education?
In 2012.
2012.
Yep.
So between 2012 and 2019, that's been 7 years. Have there been students that have come back and say, you know what, thank you, Kelly, Miss Haywood, for doing this, what I've learned? Can you talk about that for us?
Yeah, so we have, we're just now at we were founded in 2012, but we've only been in existence for 6 years. We've had students that have come back to volunteer, and I don't know if they're at that age yet to, and not saying that they don't value it, because I know that they do, and they say thank you all the time.
Right.
But as far as seeing the true impact, I don't think that they fully see it yet. The parents tell me, thank you so much. I've seen a difference. He's talking about this program all the time. He tells me what he's learned, what she's learned, and so on. And so I think that, it would be great, but the way that they would say thank you is when they start to do the amazing things that I know that they're capable of. And I'm already starting to see that. We have another student that was really shy, she was painfully shy. Now she's very outgoing. She's in the 9th grade, the first semester straight A's. So she's the model student. She's in a competitive high school, has maintained her status as as a high achieving student, is very well rounded. In the dance club, cheering, just a great kid who's really like we were talking about, owning her truth and owning the fact that she's a great kid. So
Yeah, being legitimate to who you are.
Yeah, for sure.
You feel what I'm saying? Because you being shy, no disrespect to being shy, 'cause I was shy as a little kid.
Yeah, and it's not
Right.
totally nothing wrong with being
Right.
shy. Yeah, we
Right.
be
But-
that way as adults. Yeah,
Exactly, but
yeah,
it becomes problematic when that sort of shyness sort of prevents you from taking ownership of who you are.
exactly.
You feel what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
that sort of frustration can manifest in different ways, either
Yeah.
through violence,
Right.
either through joining the wrong crowd. You feel what I'm saying? So that
Yeah.
ownership is extremely important.
Yeah.
As far as right now, with regards to Dream On Education, what do you see as far as the next steps in the future? Like, how do you want to, progress your mission further?
Yeah. So within the next 3 years, I really want for Dream On to be in about at least 60% of low-income middle schools in Chicago. I also plan for Dream On to be a national organization long term. Within the next 3 to 5 years, my goal and the organizational goal is for Dream On to expand to the other cities. I've had, almost like introductory conversations with a few people in different cities about that. As much as I'm eager to do that, I also want to make sure that we do it right and that it's still, a robust experience for the kids, their parents, and so on. And then also really just expanding in terms of our program offerings. So one of the things that we did actually a couple of days ago was the first installment of an initiative that we're calling Surfing Clouds. And so it's a day-long initiative each time where the students are completing hands-on activities related to that industry. So a couple of days ago was focused on the intersection between technology and entertainment. During the day, the students learned to produce, how to make beats. They also learned how to create their own social media marketing campaign. So not just being the user, how do I become the person that's really controlling it? And the other piece was creative direction from an aesthetic standpoint. So if someone is coming out with, an album or a new form of art, how do I create the aesthetic around that and make sure that it is aligning with this person's brand and so on. So really that was a very long-winded answer, but the shorter version is really expanding our program offerings but maintaining true to our mission.
Right. Okay, that's dope, because the thing is, with regards to all that, we said a lot today. We said a lot within this last hour or so, but the biggest problem that we talked about here was providing a sort of solution with regards to high achieving 6th to 8th grade students and preventing them from either, plateauing or going down degrees. So we got that. So now the idea is, how do, if I was 6th and 8th grade and we got people out here listening to this, how can I join the mission? How can I join, the vibe and to keep pushing forward?
For sure. One way, right now, most of our programming is specifically for our partner schools. We partner with different schools throughout the city, and to participate in most of the programming, you have to be a Dream On student within that partner school.
So what schools are those?
Tanner Elementary, Kenwood Academy, KIPP Academy, Perspectives MSA, and Ryder Elementary.
Okay.
And so within those schools, that's how students can become involved. There's an application and interview process. However, as I mentioned before, we do offer almost a la carte programming. So from anywhere between 2 to 8 week programming. For example, if you are a part of a community center this is just a random example, and you guys are looking for programming for middle school students, or you have students that fall within that high achieving, and let me be clear, when I say high achieving, they don't have to be straight A students, straight A B students, but who have shown a strong commitment to education. So with that, we do have the opportunity to provide our programming along those lines. So if there are any, community organizations, schools, churches that are interested in that, we have that within our skill set as well.
Okay, so if I was a student being in Dream On Education, tell me what do we meet once a week? Like what give me the timetable for us, the things that we do during the school year.
Yeah, we meet once per week after school for an hour. That during that time is our scholastic development time. That's when they are experiencing that hands-on curriculum that I was mentioning earlier. We're also doing the trips. We tell the students that the trips take place every other month. In most cases, it's every month. It's one of those under-promise, over-deliver things. But that's when we go on the different trips to the different companies and museums and things like that. And then the other piece is the mentorship. When we go on those trips, we have mentors that join us, again, from all walks of life. That is in a group mentor setting, but we also have the opportunity to have those one-on-one mentor-protege relationships. So that's dependent upon three people: the mentors, the students, and then, of course, the parents are the ultimate, decision makers, for sure.
Right.
So,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Wow. And so, with regards to moving forward, how can, because the whole idea, a lot of people don't know about nonprofit organizations, and I'm sure you know best as anyone, it takes a lot of effort, just a lot of resources, a lot of manpower and women power.
Yeah.
Well, definitely women power to get this all started. How can we support, your organization?
For sure. There are a number of ways to support. One thing that we have coming up actually on May 2nd is...
May 2nd. Message. Okay. Message. Okay.
On May 2nd, we have our annual fundraising soiree. It's a great time. This year's theme is Infinite Curiosity. So that theme will be integrated into the menu, the adult beverages, the aesthetic of the night. So it'll be a lot of fun. So that's one way. And it's just a great time to network and just get out the house, right? The other way is, of course, obviously donating. That's a huge part. Just in general, we always have the ways to donate. And then volunteerism. When we go on our mentor trips, we're always looking forward to having mentors that join us on those experiences. And there are a number of ways to volunteer, and I can, always feel free to reach out. We're pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. It's just @DreamOnEducation, and then /DreamOnEducation on Facebook, and then dreamoneducation.org.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And so, in closing, one thing that I definitely want to piggyback on and talk about is how your vision and also how the whole purpose of Dream On Education serves the community as a whole, as far as enfranchisement. And so one thing that hits well with me that I'm really passionate about is, if you want to change the community, you got to change the people who are now growing up within that community.
For sure.
So due to the fact that you are serving this population, serving tomorrow's leaders is a way of bringing healing to that. And so a lot of times we get caught up in the politics of things. We get caught up in all the other drama that's going on in the media, and we tend to overlook. And within that process, we overlook of how the main people who are basically receiving the information is the young people who are coming within this society. And so encouraging them, providing them with nourishment, mentally and physically, would definitely help us create that divide. So. I thank you. I definitely appreciate this.
Thank you.
Definitely appreciate this.
It's my pleasure.
No. So, please, Ms. Kelly, how can we sort of get or join your vibe for your social media? What's your social media, and how can people support?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's @DreamOnEducation. On Twitter, it's @DreamOn.org. And then Facebook is facebook.com/DreamOnEducation. So always feel free to reach out. I promise I respond. So.
Right. So also, if you were part of any of those schools that Kelly mentioned like 5 minutes ago, there should be at least 50 people from each school reach out to her.
Yeah.
Like, people should be on the wait list at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So,
for sure.
I really thank you for being here. I thank you for all the vibes and the positivity and just the progression that you share with us today.
For sure.
And thank you. Is there any other closing remarks you want to, shout out?
That's it. I appreciate you guys for having me. This was fun, and this is awesome. This platform in general is very much needed. So I know you, commended me, but I have to commend you guys on the work that you guys are doing, because it's important not only to have these conversations, but also representation of Black men in medicine, or just people in general. So I think this is great. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
You so much. So thank you. That's all for this episode. Rap, hustle, or go to the league.
Sure.
Please reach out and please be unaware. We have a lot more series coming up within this one episode of Rap, Hustle, Go to the League. And thank you. It's the Sheltuh Podcast, and we see you soon. Peace.